Welcome to Communication, Connection, Community, the Podcasters Podcast. This podcast takes a deep dive into modern-day communication strategies in the podcasting space. We chat with interesting people who make the podcasting and speaking spaces exciting and vibrant. We also dive into the podcasting community with news, updates, latest trends and topics from this ever-evolving space. So strap in. It's going to be one amazing ride. Let's dive into today's episode. It's hard to believe that podcasting has been around for over 20 years. And I'll tell you, there are days that I feel like I'm still getting started because there's been such an evolution. When I chat with people about what their journey has been, it's a relief to see that so many other people are also in that same place where if they've been around the podcasting space for a while, they're seeing a huge evolution from where they were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, if they've been in the podcasting space that long. Today's guest has been in the podcasting space for quite some time, since 2018, actually. But Scott Maderer, in 2017, he and his wife started Inspired Stewardship as a business to serve Christian men and couples who are struggling to live out their calling. They work to help align the way you use your time, your talent, and your treasures so that you can identify and live a fully authentic life that allows you to authentically live your calling, serve others, and provide for your family as well. He's a sought-after podcast guest, a sought-after podcast host. He's a recently published author with the book Inspired Living, Assemble the Puzzle of Your Call by Mastering Your Time, Your Talent, and Your Treasures. And we're going to talk about Scott's journey into the podcasting space, how it's been for him, and what the future holds for where he's taking his podcasting journey into the future. Scott, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much. I'm glad to be here.
I am so thrilled you're here. And speaking to somebody who has a little bit more journey into podcasting than I do by just a smidgen. I entered the playing field, shall we say, in 2019, but you were just ahead of me by 6 to 12 months or something like that. What was it that led you to podcasting? Of all the platforms you could have picked to get the word out about what it is that you're doing, why podcasting?
I'll give you the really short answer, and then I'll kind of expand on it. The short answer is I hate writing. So, the longer answer to that is I truly am one of those folks that if you gave me a microphone, I don't mind. I would be in front of a group of people, hand me a microphone, I'll talk. I don't care. I've never really had that fear of public speaking that people talk about. I mean, I do. It's there. I know what people are talking about. I feel it, but it's just something that it's never really stopped me from sharing. I've done a lot of public speaking. I actually had my first paid speaking event when I was 12 years old. I got paid $50 to, give my testimony somewhere. And it's like, yeah, cool. This is awesome. I can get paid to do this. And basically throughout my whole life, I was a school teacher for 16 years. I was in the corporate world doing sales and operations and, talking to clients in front of school boards. And I've done education with adults where I've been teaching groups of 100, 200, 500, 1,000, that kind of thing. And so it seemed natural rather than try to do something like a blog or something like, sit down and write all this stuff, which was really hard for me and foreign to me. Let me just get a microphone and plug it into a computer and start talking into it, and let's see where that goes. And so that's kind of the gestation of the thoughts behind podcasting as opposed to all the other things that you can do.
I love it. And it's so much quicker to get it done too. Same reason I got into radio, because not that I hate to write, it's just it took me longer to write than it was to actually speak the words, right? It's funny because here we are in this tech-driven world now. I use dictation all the time on my phone instead of sending text messages. I will check it though, just to make sure that my Siri, shall we say, we'll give her actual name, understands exactly the words.
Everyone's iPhones just went, yes.
That's true. I never thought of that. Good one. Good catch. But just to make sure that, or he gets non-gender, but hears me correctly, because sometimes not all words are interpreted equally, shall we say. So I've sent some very interesting messages to people without checking, and I go, should have maybe checked that first. Luckily, none of them have been in business. It's all been with friends or family, and they get it. And usually they laugh. Because I don't think you went to the grocery store to buy lava cakes or lava mud or one thing. I'm like, what? Well, that's what it said. I'm like, I don't even know what that means. So anyhow, you've done some work with John Maxwell too. Great company, great organization. leadership skills, all kinds of things that you learn from an organization like that. And I'm sure that's helped with your speaking as well.
Absolutely. Again, that's another one of those opportunities that I've had to learn more about speaking, about coaching. They actually, within the team, they have lanes on coaching, they have lanes on speaking, they have lanes on different parts of doing the business of leadership development. And I actually started that before I went into business for myself this time when I was still in the corporate world. That was something that I did really to get better at leadership within my corporate job. Interesting things is that it turns out that things like learning how to communicate better, learning how to coach better, learning how to lead better works whether you're in business for yourself, it works whether you're in the corporate world, it works whether you're an employee, whether you're in a leadership position, church, family, school, because those skills that you learn are applicable regardless of place. And so a lot of the work that I've done with them definitely has been something that's helped me continue to kind of refine that leadership and that speaking and that communication tool.
Fantastic. As I said, it's a great, great organization. I know it's come across my email several times to check that out. And again, phenomenal things that you learn in organizations like that. Let's get back to podcasting and talk about that journey. 2018, you're launching your show and it was smooth, right? No issues. Everything was perfect.
Yeah, no, everything, nothing ever goes wrong, right? No, I mean, I launched my first episode January 8th of 2018, and right there's already the first thing. I was actually scheduled to launch January 1st. Notice I said it went live January 8th. Already there was the thing of, oh, wait a minute, I thought I scheduled it. Why didn't it go live? Oh, let me go fix that. And those sorts of things. I was smart enough that I launched with more than one episode recorded. Both I had 3 that went out kind of that first day, and then I think I had 5 in the can. It might have been 4. It was 4 or 5 in the can that I'd already recorded. And at that time, I was actually doing a combination of interview and solo episodes. So on Monday, I would have an interview that would come out. It was actually a part of an interview. What I was doing at that time is I was recording a long form interview, so 2 hours or more. And then I was cutting it up into 4 parts. So I kind of had a part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4 across 4 Mondays. And then on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday and Friday, I had a short solo episode that I did. So when I say I had 4 or 5 in the can, it was really the interview was in the can. I'd edited the first part. I'd recorded the 4 solo episodes. I think that was it, So, and basically that's kind of what went live that first week. And immediately, you feel like, oh my, I'm behind. I've got to start editing. I've got to start scheduling. I was doing it all myself. I didn't really have anyone to help me. I hadn't really gotten a lot of training. So it was a lot of YouTube videos and watching a lot of the resources that folks have now available to them, like what you do and others do on teaching and training and all of that wasn't really out there that much yet in 2018. So it was a lot of just let me figure it out as I go. And hopefully this is going to work. Ended up being interesting is I really enjoyed it. I got good feedback. I had, the first episode, of course, I had, me, my mom, my cat, that's all who listened, right? That kind of thing. But my cat's mom, if I was lucky, sometimes she tuned me out. It's that kind of like everybody, there's 5, 10 downloads or whatever it was. But pretty quickly, I started enjoying it. I started sharing about it. I started talking to people about it. I started going on other people's shows and kind of connecting back to what I was doing. And so it started to grow. One of the things that happens is when you start to see more downloads, I think a lot of people look at those numbers and kind of go, oh, great, I've got 15 this week instead of 50. For me, it was like, wait a minute, I've got 15 downloads. That's 15 people. Wow, how cool is that? I don't talk to 15 people in a week. This is awesome. It was that feeling of, wait a minute, this week I reached 50 people. And I was able to look at those numbers. And now I'll be honest, I don't look at the numbers nearly as much as I did when I started out. I kind of got away from that, but they were able to translate to me into real people listening. And that kept me going and kept me realizing, hey, even if they're not emailing me or calling me or reaching out to me, I'm making an impact. And it was actually the end of the second month that I had somebody reach out and say, hey, I've been listening to your show and I'd like to talk to you about maybe working together. And so, which was one of the reasons I was doing the show is marketing for my business. So it was like immediate proof of, wow, this could work. And so that happened early enough. I think that's part of it too that kept going, is that happened pretty early for me.
It's funny that you mentioned that because there are a lot of individuals, I think, when they first come to the podcasting space, the first thing they say is, okay, I got my podcast, I'm putting it out there. Show me the audience. I've built it. Where are you people? Come on. You should be here listening to my show. Not realizing that, firstly, it's a journey and everyone's journey is different. If you're somebody like Tony Robbins or Oprah Winfrey or Joe Rogan, any of those individuals, they've already made the journey for themselves with other things they've done. So, of course, they launch a podcast, they'll get 10,000 downloads in their sleep, let alone when people are awake, right? That's just the nature of the game. But if you are somebody like Scott Maderer, brand new, those 10 episodes, or those not 10 episodes, rather, those 10 downloads, 15, 30, whatever it is, those are worth celebrating. And that's just the beginning. And you'll get better as you go along, number one. So if you mess up
Please
a
don't go listen
date,
to the first 10 episodes. Please don't.
He has a back catalog, folks. Go and check them out. But seriously, it's this, and we talked about this just before we went on today, is about the, how many episodes actually make it past number 10. And it's not many. It's, people will launch those 4, 5, 6, 8 episodes and go, shoot, this is work. And you have to love it. You have to appreciate that it is a long game, not a short game. You have to allow yourself the opportunity yourself to grow as you grow the show. And you have to understand that this is like any other industry. It's constantly evolving. So if you take, for example, what was commonplace back in 2018 when you launched, but without considering what's going on now in the podcasting space, be it AI tools to make the job easier, be it video. I know you still have an audio only podcast. I want to talk about that in just a minute. But whatever it is, there's an evolution to the industry. Even microphones have evolved since 2018. So all of those changes, you have to stick with it. And if you don't, then you'll get left behind anyways, but you'll give up and say, that didn't work. I attune it to, it's like eating 5 salads and saying, why haven't I shed 15 pounds? Right? Same kind of thing. It's a long game.
Well, and a lot of it too, I think, is people don't go into it with any thought of, I mean, this is true of business in general, whether it's a podcasting, and I'm going to refer to podcasting as a business. Yes, you can do it as a hobby. Yes, you can do it for other things, but it's still, to me, it's kind of got that same sort of mindset of you got to treat it kind of like a business. And all of the time when you go into it, a lot of times that if I build it, they will come mentality is really common, without stopping to think about, wait a minute, what is my plan to actually get people to learn about this? I'm not going to just hang up a shingle on my office door and expect 10,000 customers to show up. Nobody would do that. Somebody opens a brick and mortar store, they advertise, they talk about it, they do things to let people know they exist. We kind of have to do the same thing in a podcasting world and so, like I said, one of my techniques was go on other people's shows. Why? Because if I'm going on someone that has a podcast, the people that are listening actually know what a podcast is. I don't have to explain to them what a podcast is. I can just mention, hey, I've got a show too. And all of a sudden they may come over and listen. And being a little strategic and thinking about, well, what kind of people am I trying to attract to my show? What's their mindset? What are they after? What are they thinking about? And then going and doing. Now, back then it was really hard. You actually had to go look at iTunes and do a lot of research to figure out there's a podcast that might have a listenership kind of like the people that I'm trying to attract. Let me go find an email and reach out to that person or find a website and all of that. Now, again, like you said, the industry's evolved. There's a lot of tools and a lot of services out there that make that a lot easier to do the research and to do the reach out and to make the connection. Today, getting guests is probably 1,000 times easier than it was when I launched. And being on other people's shows is easily 1,000 times easier than it was when I launched. So having that ability to do that, making that easier, I think that's a lot of the learning. But back at the beginning, it's going into it with a plan for what are you actually going to do. And that means committing some time, committing some energy, committing some resources. It's not necessarily a huge amount of money, but at the very least, it's going to be time and energy in some sort of way for either you or somebody else to be going out there and promoting, sharing. It's not enough anymore to just throw it up on Facebook and go, hey, I've got a show, here's my new episode, check it out. You've got to do more than that to be able to get folks interested in coming over.
I have a colleague, actually, speaking of which, who is really good at this, and he plays the Facebook algorithm game quite well when he's writing posts, just in general, let alone about letting people know about your new episode. He's writing his episode, or he's writing his Facebook post, and he's telling a story. It might be a story that's personal. It might be something that relates to a movie or a television show, something that lays the groundwork, tells the story. That's another evolution, is the evolution with how you promote your show. Email is still top drawer, I think, for a lot of people, promoting it through your list, especially if it's for business. Social media, there's been an evolution there. So understanding that, yes, you can promote your show on various social media platforms, which is the main one, though, where people are going to get them, where you'll get the most traction, number one, but where people are most likely to live, work, and play, be it Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is. What are they? And understanding that you can't just write that post that says, check out my new episode, I'm talking with Scott Maderer, great guy, have a listen. It don't cut it anymore because actually, and people don't care. People go, oh, there's another one, saw somebody else promoting their podcast episode. So that's one thing. I did want to mention, though, that you still, after you're entering like 7 years into podcasting, you still have an audio only show, which I think is phenomenal because, full disclosure, at the recording of this, I still have an audio only show. A lot of individuals have said, hey, Carl, you should be doing video, if for no other reason, because video, right? What's made you stick with just the audio format?
A lot of it is just I've got a system, I've got a process. It works for me. From a time perspective, from an energy perspective, it's not something that I have to. I'm not going to say it's easy and automatic and there's not any work involved, because there is, but it's not hard because I know how to do it and it works and I'm getting the results that I want. I have thought about, eventually I may start either a second show or sunset this show and start a new one, especially with the book and other things, and kind of rebrand under a new umbrella, so to speak. And if I do that, I probably will start as video, because so much now it's easier to promote video sort of highlighted. There's some natural reach that comes with video that currently is not happening with audio. So I would probably start, if I was starting today, I would start with video. But because I've been doing it so long, because I've got traction, I've got loyal listeners, I've got folks that listen, and I've surveyed them and reached out to them and said, hey, do you want me to, would you like to see video? Obviously, you don't get, as you get 5,000 downloads on episodes, you do not get 5,000 people answering a survey, but you get a small little segment of them. But those folks that have given me feedback have been like, I tend to listen to you when I'm on the go. I really don't want the video. It's not that big of a deal to me. So for the current show, it's somewhat inertia, easier, and I'm getting the results I want. I think that's an important part. I haven't really seen a drop off in listeners. I haven't seen, in fact, it's continued to grow. I haven't seen, less folks reaching out for business. I haven't seen less reach. I haven't seen less impact. So there's no real drive to change. But again, if I started over today, I just start with the other, because you'd be starting from zero. And so it'd be an easier place to start from.
I think that's a good example. Is you have been doing this for a while. You're getting the results you want. I think that's the key right there is, and I attune this to professional speaking. If it is your, modus operandi to speak on big stages that give you, 150, 200 people or more on a conference circuit, and that's what you need to build your business, perfect, go and do it. But if you are the type of business owner who is okay with speaking to 15, 20, 30 people, because those are fairly entry-level results, even for an audio-only podcast now, and that's all you need, and that's going to get you one or two really key clients in a year, then it's serving its purpose. That's the way I look at it. But there is this called evil, but there is this thing called Meta and this thing called Google, who've decided that audio is where it's at. They give a lot more love towards those platforms. So, or video, you knew what I meant. but yeah, they give more love to that. And that's not to say that audio isn't important. As a matter of fact, audio Without audio, there is no video. So you still need to make sure that the audio piece is, in some cases, even better. Make sure that, because you can correct bad video. Bad audio is still, even with all the tools out there, it's still not the easiest thing to correct if you haven't put the audio through a really good product to begin with.
Well, and there's actually a lot of studies that I've seen that show that, like YouTube, which is a video only kind of channel, that there's a significant number of people, myself included, that will often have YouTube playing, have something on, have my earbuds in, have my phone in my pocket. I am not watching that video. I'm listening to the video. I'm treating it as if it's audio only, even though there's a video component. The other thing I would say, because I've seen a lot of folks that they take an audio podcast and then they slap video on top of it and start releasing the video too for that reach. I would argue that there is a difference in how you position audio content versus video content in terms of the language you use, the way you describe things, the way you talk about things. It irritates the heck out of me when I'm listening to a podcast that's an audio only podcast on iTunes and they say, look at this picture. And I'm like, I kind of can't, what picture are you talking about? And I'll stop listening. It's like, okay, you lost me. So if you are going to produce video content and say things like, listen to this picture, don't make that mistake of strip the video out and throw it up on iTunes and say, there's my audio podcast too. You actually have to think about the fact that they are different modalities. Even if somebody is not watching the video, if I said, hey, look at this picture, and it was important, I would pull my phone out, back the video up a few seconds and look at the picture that they said, and okay, that's the picture they're talking about. And then put the phone back in my pocket and go on about my day. But it's the difference. And I've seen a lot of folks making that mistake. I feel like that is a mistake because it turns people off.
I'll say I know why this is a mistake, or how this mistake is being made, rather. It's a difference between radio and television, right? Radio is theater of the mind. If you think back to those old radio shows of the 1930s and 1940s, every single thing is that Bob reached for the doorknob. He turned the handle, click. It creaked open, creak. Like every single piece painted the picture in your mind. And if you just say, Bob opened the door, okay, you kind of can have a picture of Bob opening the door. But if you don't paint enough of the picture or give enough of the auditory messaging to your example, take a look at this picture, it's lost, right? So you have to think of it. If you're watching, you can see the picture, but if you're listening to the podcast, let me describe what's in the picture. It's 3 circles, and in those 3 circles, there's a little dot, and the little dots represent a graphic or a story.
And now if they do that, what you just said, now all of a sudden it's like, okay, I'll keep listening because they acknowledge the fact that I may not be looking at the picture.
And a video audience will appreciate that. They won't care that you actually took that 2 or 3 seconds to explain it.
Well, again, some of them have their phone in their pocket, so they're actually like, hey, cool, I don't have to pull my phone out.
That's true. But a video audience, like an audience where people are literally sitting there watching the video, they won't care. But the people who are listening to the audio, even if it's on the video channel, you're right, they'll still appreciate the fact that you just painted that picture for them. Really good example. You're launching your podcast in 2024 all over again. You're starting from scratch. This is hypothetical, by the way. I'm not telling you have to do this. Aside from, you're like, wait a minute, I've already been on this journey, Carl.
Wait, I'm launching again.
Don't make me try and get past episode 8 again.
That'd be easier now.
That's true. You have a little bit of experience. You're starting from scratch again. We already know that you would probably start a brand new podcast. When you start a brand new show, it probably would be video. Let me ask you this, though. What else would you do differently knowing what you know now?
I also think I'd probably lean in a little bit more to longer form content. I tend to do, and I still do, most of my episodes are 20 minutes to 40-minute kind of length. And there's actually reason for that. And I don't think there's a bad thing about that. I don't think it's a negative per se, but I think I would lean more into fewer episodes, but longer episodes, where I still do now twice a week is currently my release schedule. At one time I was doing 6 times a week, but they're all short. And I think there's some value now. And I think folks, there's so much short form content out there, the TikToks, the Instagram stories, the Facebook, whatever, the reels. And there's a place for that. But I also think that there, especially for a business based podcast or things where we're trying to dive deeper into some of the story behind the story, the going deeper than just the surface level, there's some value into leaning into and going longer rather than shorter. And again, I think some of that is an evolution over time. And I think some of that is thinking about the audience that I would want to attract. Is that audience that's going to stick and listen to a 2-hour thing, or an hour and a half thing? I that's more the psychology of the person that actually tends to do business with me, tends to be somebody that is attracted to what I talk about and what I teach, how I work. And so I didn't know that early on, which is why I kind of kept it the short form. Again, this is another kind of like, well, why haven't you added in video? Well, because this is kind of the promise I made whenever I was doing it, and I don't really want to change it in this show. But if I was launching all over again, I think that's another thing that I'd probably lean into.
You're coming from a place of experience. I will say that. I would caution against a brand new person trying to do an hour-long podcast.
I agree 110%.
When all they have is 6 minutes worth of content and they try and stretch it to an hour, because that is when people tune out. And that's when people get discouraged and say, I've been doing this podcast for 8 episodes and I have 3 listeners. Because quite often what happens too is when people come to us for training or even prospects, they say, how long should a podcast episode be? And I say, as long as it needs to be. No longer, which means if it needs to be 17 minutes, make it 17 minutes. If you have enough content to make it longer, or you have enough, I'll go with your example there, you have enough experience, or your audience would be okay with you doing an hour or an hour and a half long content, a podcast episode rather, and you don't lose them.
And that's a lot of it, as I think I know my audience better now than I did when I started. I've learned that over time. That's part of it. I've gotten better at interviewing, at asking good questions, at drawing things out of folks. I've gotten better, even with just solo content, finding that thing that, oh, wow, at first glance, it's like, oh, I could talk on that for like 6 minutes. And now it's more like, I could do 40 episodes on that. It's like, I could talk forever on that topic. So it's, training your brain. We talked earlier about training your brain to constantly be looking for content, for snippets, for things that you can turn into show content or reach out to guests about, or that sort of thing. Some of that is just learning to do that over time. And again, that puts me in a different place today than I would have been back when I really, really first started. The other piece I would say is kind of to your point of it should be long enough. I would also say, because I've been asked, how many points should you make in a podcast? There's kind of that old, do you have 3 points or do you have 7 points? How many bullet points do you have? And my answer to that one is at least one, because there's also the episode and this is where the long form, like you said, could be a problem where it's like, okay, we've meandered all over the place and you haven't made a point yet. Let's go. That always bothers me too with, intros that are like, it's a 42-minute episode and about minute 20, they've gotten through with the intro. And it's like, okay, guys, come on. We can get there a little quicker than that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And to your point, yes, you should make at least 1 point. And I think the number of points will, again, that goes back to the audience. And I always like to, when I'm training people how to do it, I'll break it down, because when I'm training people, they're coming from a place of 0, right? They're coming from a place of, I don't have a show. What do I need to know to get launched? And I'll give them some structure. I'll say, if you can come up with 2 or 3 points, and I attune it to being almost like a Toastmaster speech, where it can be, can you come up with 5 to 7 minutes or even 10 minutes of content? Because if you can, that's a great length for a brand new person starting a podcast. It's not too cumbersome. You don't have to try and reinvent the wheel to try and come up with more content. If you can do that from a starting point, great. So 3 points or 2 points. And that's a good point. That serves you. But as you evolve, as you have evolved, because you're entering your 7th year now, it's a different game for you. And it's a different game as your show has evolved for your audience. They might be able to take a full-blown hour and a half or 2 hour, even seminar that is technically an episode, but it's more of a seminar style show now. And there are shows like that. There are episodes like that. There are shows like that. Those are okay. I wouldn't recommend starting like that. But
No,
there are
if you're
shows
starting
like
from
this.
zero, I would not start from there. And I would say honestly, in my opinion, when you're starting out, I think having at least some part of your show where you're doing some sort of interview based talking to other people is valuable, just because it's not all on you, to come up with the conversation and to drive the conversation. It's more of a, hey, let's jump on a call and talk. And now, again, with that, there's good interviews and there's bad interviews, and you're going to get better at it over time. I know I'm considerably better at it today, and I still will not consider myself the best interviewer on the planet by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm better because you learn to listen and to listen for, oh, they just said, oh, that's the next question I want to ask. Let me ask that question. And so you're listening. So often we listen to hear the other person so that we can respond. When you're interviewing, and honestly, I think when you're coaching, and I'm a coach as a profession, so I do this as a coach too, you have to train yourself to listen with the thought of what's the next question I need to ask, as opposed to what do I want to respond? What do I want to say in response? It's what's the next question that I need to ask. That gets easier over time. That is not something that's easy to do when you first start out.
When you first start out, that it's very tricky. We don't have the best examples we have are, again, radio and television, but most of us coming to this platform, we don't have experience. I do. I come from a place of experience with 25 years in broadcasting. I know how to get information out of people. I just know how to do that. It comes naturally. Well, it didn't come naturally. It came with years of doing it and doing it over and over and over again to be able to do that. And also to fill for time. You have to do that sometimes in the media world. So I know how to do that and fill the gaps where necessary. It made it more of a comfort zone for me launching my show to launch with solo episodes. As you said, though, that's not the case for everybody. They might need that. Maybe your first episode is setting the table of here's what the podcast is going to be about. Here's my backstory. Here's what you can expect, that kind of thing. And then maybe you're having some conversations, but recognize that it's whatever works for you. But I like definitely the fact that having it conversational, it also allows you, like you say, to strengthen that interviewing muscle, which you'll suck at first, but the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. So, wow. Oh my goodness, Scott. Amazing conversation. I could talk to you forever. That's a very long time though. So maybe when I rebrand my podcast and I'm doing forever length episodes, I'll have you back for sure. But share with our listeners what you want to pass on to them today, because I know you have a gift or something you'd like to offer them.
Absolutely. So actually, I put together a special page just for your listeners where they can get some free resources, find out more about my podcast if you're interested in checking that out. My book information is over there, all of that. So if you'll go to inspiredstewardship.com and then just /CCC, so just the three C's, the initials of your show, Carl, then they'll be able to find that. Download those resources if they're interested in them on the time, the talent, and the treasures areas that I work. Find out more about my podcast, my book, and all of that.
Phenomenal. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Scott. We'll make sure, by the way, that the link that Scott mentioned is in the show notes, as well as his other social links and the website, so you can connect with Scott. He's a phenomenal resource. It's an amazing conversation I've had with you today, Scott. So I certainly do hope that people take you up on that offer and grab those resources from you. Before I turn you loose, though, to likely go record another episode.
Actually, I do have to record an episode this afternoon.
I got 5 minutes before I have to hit the microphone. I'll leave you with the final thought.
For me, I think I want to do it in the theme of the podcast, what we've been talking about. But one thing I'll share. So, we mentioned the book a couple of times, and where the book came from, everything that's in that book came from the podcast. I want to share with folks that one of the reasons that I love podcasting and love people that getting into it is, again, you make connections. Most people that are podcasting are very friendly, very helpful, very kind people. I've run into very few jerks, run into a few, but not very many. And they'll actually help you. So, with my book, I spoke the content. It's all from the podcast. The person that helped me get in touch with the publisher met through the podcast. I interviewed people for the book. All people who I'd met through the podcast. My editor, somebody I knew through the podcast. So it's all of these connections that you make adds so much more value. So to extrapolate that, what the takeaway for me, that final thought is, don't hesitate. Even if you're an introvert like me and don't necessarily really like making connections, value that power of connection that we have and lean into it. And you'd be surprised at how quickly and how often that can help you really get where you want. If you're going into those relationships with the attitude of, how can I help you? How can I work with you? What can I do to make your life better? Inevitably, your life is blessed by that as well.
Wow, such a powerful message and a great way to end it. Scott Maderer, thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thank you.
And hey, thank you for being a part of the show today. So glad you could join us. Believe it or not, I can't work this magic by myself. So thanks to my amazing team, our audio engineer, Dom Carillio, our sonic branding genius, Kenton Dilborowski, and the person who works the arms, all of our arms actually, our project manager and my trusty assistant, Jillavel Tiongo, known to us here simply as July. If you like what you heard today, let us know. You can leave us a comment or review or even send us a voice note. And if you really liked it, we hope you'll share it with your friends and your colleagues. If you don't like what you heard today, well, please feel free to share it with your enemies. And if you know of someone who would make a great guest on the show, let us know about it. You can get in touch with us by going to our show notes where all of our connection points are there, including the links to our website, LinkedIn, and Facebook as well. And if you're ready to be a guest on podcasts or even start your own show, let's have a conversation. We'll show you the simplest way to get into the podcasting space and rock it. Because, after all, we're Podcast Solutions Made Simple. Catch you again next time.